I never believed the stories about Hollow Pines until the night I went there myself. People in my town used to whisper about it, saying it was cursed, saying anyone who spent a night there came back different. Some never came back at all. To me, it sounded like the kind of thing kids made up to scare each other during sleepovers. I laughed when my friends warned me not to take the dare. I laughed when they said the forest was alive, watching, waiting. But when I stepped past the tree line that night with only my flashlight and my phone, the laughter died quickly. It started with silence, an unnatural kind of silence. No crickets, no owls, no rustling leaves. Just a stillness so heavy it felt like the air itself was holding its breath. My boots crunched on the ground, and every sound I made seemed too loud, echoing in ways it shouldn't have. I kept walking, telling myself I was fine, that it was just a forest. But then, I noticed the trees. They weren't right. The trunks were twisted, bent unnaturally, as if they were straining towards something, or away from it. Their branches curled like fingers reaching down, and when the wind stirred, they creaked, not like wood, but almost like whispers. My light caught carvings in the bark, symbols I didn't recognize. Old, jagged, burned deep into the wood. Some looked like eyes, and when I passed, I could have sworn they blinked. I told myself it was just shadows, just nerves. But then, I saw the cabin. It was sitting in a clearing like it had been waiting for me. Its roof sagged, its windows were boarded, and its door hung crooked. But it wasn't abandoned. I knew it wasn't, because smoke curled from the chimney. I froze, staring at it, my heart slamming against my ribs. Nobody lived out here. Nobody was supposed to. But I had already come this far. Turning back would make me the coward my friends expected me to be, so I forced my legs to move. The closer I got, the colder it became. My breath puffed white in the beam of my flashlight, and the air smelled of iron, sharp and metallic. When I reached the porch, the boards sagged under my weight, groaning like they were warning me. My hands shook as I pushed the door open, and the hinges screamed in protest. Inside, the cabin was dark, lit only by the dying glow of a fire in the stone hearth. The air was thick with dust, and something else, something rotten. And then, I heard it. A voice. Low, humming, coming from the shadows. It wasn't a song I knew, but it seeped into my skin, crawling over my bones. I swung the flashlight toward the sound and nearly dropped it. There was a man, or what used to be a man, sitting in a chair in the corner. His skin was gray, stretched tight over his skull. His eyes sunken but burning faintly red in the dark. His lips moved with a hum, though I could see he had no teeth. He stopped when the light hit him, and slowly, so slowly, his head turned toward me. "Another one," he rasped. His voice was dry, like dead leaves. "Another one for the woods." I stumbled back, nearly tripping. But before I could run, the door slammed shut behind me with a force that shook the walls. The man didn't move from his chair. He only raised a hand, bony and twisted, and pointed at me. And then I heard the whispers again. Not from him. From the trees. The sound filled the cabin, circling me, pressing in. My flashlight flickered, and for the brief second it dimmed, I saw them figures standing at the windows, their faces pressed against the glass. Pale faces, hollow eyes, watching, waiting. I don't remember how I escaped that night. I remember clawing the door open, running until my lungs burned, and stumbling out of the forest with torn clothes and bleeding hands. But I swear, even as I write this now, the whispering hasn't stopped. I still hear it when the world goes quiet. And sometimes, when I close my eyes, I see that man in the chair, smiling with no teeth, humming his song. And I know Hollow Pines isn't finished with me yet. I told myself I would never go back to Hollow Pines. The night I barely escaped from that cabin, I swore I would bury the memory and never set foot near that forest again. But promises like that are fragile things when something has already followed you home. At first, it was only in my dreams. I'd wake in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, the sound of that humming still in my ears. Sometimes I'd see the man in the chair at the foot of my bed, lips moving, skin gray, pointing at me with that bony finger. The moment I blinked, he'd be gone, leaving only the silence and my pounding heart. Then came the whispers. At school, I'd be sitting in class, and suddenly the sound of dozens of voices would slither into my head, speaking words I couldn't understand. At the grocery store, I'd reach for a can on the shelf and hear faint breathing in my ear. At home, the shadows in the corners of my room seemed to grow longer, stretching toward me. I tried telling myself it was just trauma, just my imagination replaying what I had seen in the woods. But then my little sister, Emma, asked me something that made my blood turn to ice. "Why do you hum at night?" she said one morning over breakfast. I froze, spoon halfway to my mouth. "What are you talking about?" "You sit in your room and hum. Sometimes it wakes me up," she said, frowning like she wasn't sure if she should have mentioned it. "It sounds like the man Grandpa used to sing about, the one in the woods." I nearly dropped the spoon. I hadn't told her or anyone about the man in the chair. I hadn't told anyone what happened in Hollow Pines. My parents wouldn't have believed me. But somehow, the sound had come into my house through me. That's when I knew the forest wasn't finished with me. I started researching, digging through old local newspapers, asking questions to anyone who might know the legends. Most people just laughed it off. But an older man at the library didn't. When I mentioned Hollow Pines, he looked at me like I had said a curse word. "Stay away from there, boy," he whispered, leaning close. "That place has been feeding for over 100 years. Folks go missing. Always have. Some come back. But they're never the same." "What do you mean feeding?" I asked. He just shook his head. "Some places aren't meant for people. They're meant for something else." I pressed him, but he refused to say more. Still, it was enough to send me deeper down the rabbit hole. I found reports from the 1940s about children disappearing near the forest. In the 70s, a group of campers vanished without a trace. Every decade, more names, more empty graves. And one detail kept repeating. Witnesses claimed they heard humming in the trees. By then, my nights had become unbearable. The humming wasn't just in my dreams anymore. I caught myself humming during the day without realizing it. The same tune the man in the chair had been singing. My reflection in the mirror seemed paler, my eyes darker. And sometimes, when I looked long enough, the reflection would smile even though I wasn't. It wasn't just me either. Emma started having nightmares, waking up screaming about the people in the windows. My mother grew more tired each day, like the house itself was draining her. The air felt heavy, oppressive. I couldn't escape the truth anymore. The forest had followed me home, and the only way to stop it was to go back. So one night, I packed a bag, flashlight, phone, a knife I took from the kitchen and headed toward Hollow Pines. The moment I crossed the tree line, the whispers returned, louder than ever. My flashlight beam trembled across the twisted trunks, catching those strange carved symbols again. Only this time, I realized they weren't random markings. They were words, or maybe names, hundreds of them. And some of them were fresh. I pressed deeper into the woods, following the pull in my chest that seemed to be guiding me back to the cabin. The trees leaned closer the farther I went, their branches tangling above me until the sky disappeared completely. It was like walking into the mouth of something alive. When I reached the clearing, my stomach dropped. The cabin was there, but it didn't look old and abandoned anymore. The boards were straight, the roof whole, and the windows glowed faintly with firelight. Smoke poured thick from the chimney. It looked alive, thriving, and then I heard her. "Help me." The voice was faint, desperate, and it was coming from inside. "Emma." I ran before I could think, slamming into the door with my shoulder. It burst open, and the heat of the fire hit me like a wave. Inside, the cabin wasn't empty. Figures crowded the room, pale, hollow-eyed, their faces blank, lips moving in that endless humming. And in the center, tied to a chair, was Emma. Her eyes were wide with terror, her cheeks wet with tears. "Don't let them take me," she screamed. I charged forward, swinging the knife wildly, but the figures didn't move. They just kept humming, swaying slightly, like they were part of some ritual. The man in the corner, the one with the gray skin and red eyes, slowly stood. His movements were stiff, creaking like old wood. "You brought her," he rasped, grinning with those toothless gums. "The forest thanks you." I screamed and lunged at him, knife raised. But before I could strike, the shadows themselves seemed to come alive. They wrapped around me, cold and suffocating, yanking me back. My flashlight clattered to the floor, the beam skittering across the walls. For a split second, I saw the truth. The walls weren't wood. They were flesh, pulsing, alive, covered in symbols carved deep into the skin. And then the humming grew so loud it drowned out my own thoughts. The last thing I remember before blacking out was Emma's scream, echoing through the cabin as the man's red eyes burned into mine. When I woke up, I was outside the forest, lying in the dirt near the road. My clothes were torn, my hands bloody, but Emma was gone. No one believed me when I said the forest took her. They said I was in shock, that she must have wandered off, that I was imagining things. But I know the truth. The forest took her because it wanted her, because I brought it home. And now, it wants me back. And I know I'll go, because no matter how far I run, the humming never stops. I don't know how much longer I can keep this to myself. Writing it down feels dangerous, like every word pulls the forest closer. But maybe this is the only way to leave a record if I don't come back. After Emma vanished, life became unbearable. My parents clung to hope, telling themselves the police would find her, but I knew better. The search parties combed the woods for weeks, dogs barking, men shouting her name, but hollow pines swallowed everything. Not a single trace of her was ever found. And through it all, the humming never stopped. I heard it in my room at night, in the walls of the house, even in my own chest when I breathed too deep. Sometimes I'd catch my reflection whispering when I wasn't. The longer it went on, the more convinced I became that Emma wasn't gone, at least. Not in the way they thought. The forest hadn't killed her. It had taken her, and it wanted me to follow. The pull grew stronger every day. I'd wake in the middle of the night standing at the back door, my hand on the knob, ready to walk into the dark. I started blacking out, waking with mud under my nails and pine needles tangled in my hair. It wasn't sleepwalking. It was the forest calling me back. One night, I made a choice. If the forest wanted me, it could have me, but not without a fight. I wasn't going to leave Emma there, not if there was even the smallest chance she was still alive. I packed everything I thought might help. Rope, a heavier knife, my father's old revolver he kept locked away, a lantern with extra batteries, a notebook where I wrote everything I'd learned, and around my neck, I wore a cross my grandmother gave me before she died. She used to tell me it was more than jewelry, that it was protection. I didn't know if I believed her, but I was desperate enough to try anything. The night I left, the sky was moonless, the kind of black that makes you feel like you're already underground. The air was cold, sharp in my lungs. I drove as far as the road would take me, then got out and walked the rest of the way toward hollow pines. Every step closer made the humming louder, but something else came with it too, laughter. Faint at first, like children playing hide and seek, drifting through the trees. It twisted my stomach because I knew one of those voices was Emma's. When I reached the tree line, I whispered her name. The forest answered. The trees shifted, branches curling like fingers pointing me inward. The dirt beneath my boots pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat, and I walked deeper and deeper until the world behind me no longer existed. The cabin waited where it always did, except now it was bigger. The walls stretched higher, the roof jagged and sharp, like the forest had grown it from the ground itself. The windows glowed faintly red, pulsing in time with the humming that rattled my bones. Inside, I knew Emma was waiting. I gripped the revolver and stepped forward. The door opened before I touched it, swinging wide as though it had been expecting me. The smell hit first rot, and smoke, and something sweet, like fruit left to decay in the sun. Shadows moved across the walls, long and thin, bending in ways no human shape could. And there she was. Emma sat in the chair where I'd last seen her, hands bound, eyes wide. But she didn't look afraid this time. She looked calm. Her lips moved in silence, as though she were humming along. "Emma," I whispered. Her head turned slowly toward me, and for a second, I thought it was her, my sister, alive. But then I saw the thing behind her, standing tall in the corner. The man, or what used to be a man. His gray skin hung loose, his eyes burning like embers. He smiled when he saw me. "You came back," he rasped, voice like dry leaves scraping together. "The forest always gets what it's owed." I raised the revolver, hands shaking. "Let her go," the man chuckled. And the shadows around the room stirred, crawling along the floor like smoke. "She belongs here now, as do you. You brought her gift, and in return, the forest keeps her safe." "She's not yours," I shouted. Emma's lips parted then, and the sound that came out wasn't her voice. It was hundreds of voices layered together, whispering, humming, calling my name. "Michael." I staggered back, clutching the cross at my neck. The metal burned hot in my hand, and the humming faltered, just for a second. The man hissed, his grin breaking into something sharp. "You can't fight us," he snarled. "We are older than your gods, older than the bones beneath your feet. Every soul feeds the roots. Every name becomes the song. And soon, you will join it." The shadows lunged. I fired the revolver, the sound deafening in the cabin. The shot tore through one of the figures, but instead of falling, it dissolved into black smoke, shrieking as it vanished into the walls. The others closed in, humming louder, faster, until it was all I could hear. I dropped to my knees, clutching the cross, and shouted Emma's name. For the first time, her real voice broke through the noise. "Help me!" Summoning everything I had left, I staggered forward, slashing the rope that bound her wrists. The moment the rope snapped, the cabin trembled. The humming turned into a roar, the walls rippling like flesh trying to hold itself together. The man bellowed, his eyes blazing. "You cannot take her!" I grabbed Emma's hand and pulled her up. She stumbled, weak, but she was real, solid, alive. Together, we ran for the door. But the shadows surged, slamming it shut. The man stepped forward, raising his hand. The symbols carved into the walls began to glow, bleeding red light. The forest itself was alive, and it wasn't letting us go. I shoved Emma behind me, gripping the cross with one hand and the revolver with the other. "If you want me," I shouted, "then take me." "But you can't have her." The man paused, eyes narrowing, and for a heartbeat, the humming went silent. Then he smiled again. "Brave," he said. "But the forest doesn't bargain." The floor cracked open beneath us, roots surging upward like serpents, wrapping around my legs, my arms. I screamed, firing again and again, the bullets ripping into the walls. Each shot made the cabin shake harder, but the roots only tightened. Emma clung to me, crying, whispering prayers under her breath, and then something changed. The cross around my neck flared with light, brighter than the lantern, brighter than the fire in the hearth. The roots recoiled, hissing. The man staggered back, covering his eyes. The symbols on the walls flickered and dimmed. For the first time, the forest screamed. I don't remember what happened next. The light consumed everything, and when I opened my eyes, I was lying on the road outside Hollow Pines. Emma was beside me, unconscious but breathing. The cabin, the man, the forest, it was gone. or so I thought. It's been 3 weeks since that night. Emma barely speaks now, and when she does, it's never about what happened. My parents believe she was kidnapped and somehow escaped, and maybe that's the lie we'll keep. But I know better, because sometimes, late at night, I hear her humming in her sleep. The same tune, the same song, and last night, when I walked past her room, she was sitting at the window, staring out into the dark. "They're still calling," she whispered, "and one day I'll have to answer."